6:17, we received a report of an active shooter inside the Zona Caliente Sports Bar. It's like a restaurant slash bar. So multiple units from around the city flooded to the area because we know as first responders, the quicker we can get to these types of scenes, usually it will prevent further loss of life. When we got on scene, there were 2 deceased individuals located inside the restaurant. By preliminarily conducting quick interviews with those that were on scene, there was upwards of 15 to 20 patrons inside the business and 4 or 5 employees. They reported that the shooting suspect had entered the location, had immediately walked to the end of the bar where there was an employee standing, and something was said, we're not sure what, and then he pulled a gun out and shot and killed the employee. While that's going on, there was a customer at the location having dinner with his wife. He told his wife at that point to get down because he was carrying a firearm, and he made the conscious decision to go ahead and engage the shooter, thinking that there might be further loss of life. While he's doing that, he's involved in shooting at the suspect. The suspect goes down, and he's pronounced deceased as well. There was a 3rd victim at the location, a female, but we believe her injuries were consistent with trying to run out of the business. There's a lot of broken glass in there from the shooting. We believe her feet were cut, and that's why she went to the hospital. So right now, we've got to vet those details. He claims he has a concealed handgun license, and we'll look at that, obviously. But right now, you know, from what we've been able to ascertain and gather just from the people that were on the scene, it sounds as if this guy really kind of saved or prevented further loss of life. And so we'll be piecing that together as the interviews occur. We've got a lot of people to interview. We have victim service counselors on scene. A lot of people traumatized by what they saw, fearing that they were going to be killed, stuff like that. So anytime you try to process that in, we want to make sure we have our counselors and stuff here on scene for them.
Now to an untold story on the shooting at Clackamas Town Center. We now know there was another armed man in the mall that day, a shopper who had the shooter in his gun sight, but never pulled the trigger. The night team's Mike Benner is live outside the mall. And Mike, the big question for many tonight would be, why didn't he shoot?
And Tracy, he understands that is a question a lot of people will be asking tonight. But Nick Mealy tells us he did not shoot because he was afraid he would injure or kill an innocent person running for safety. Nick Mealy is emotionally drained. The 22-year-old was at the Clackamas Town Center with a friend and her 4-month-old baby when a masked gunman opened fire.
I heard 3 shots, and I turned and looked at Casey, and I go, are you fucking serious? And she looks at me and she goes, yeah.
As the friend and baby hit the floor, Mealy, who has a concealed carry permit, positioned himself behind a pillar.
He was working on his rifle, and he kept pulling the charging handle and hitting the side.
The break in gunfire allowed Mealy to pull out his own gun, a Glock 22, but he never took his eyes off the shooter.
In my mind, I kept saying, like, drop it, drop the gun, you know. And when I drew up, I got tunnel vision, and all I saw was my front sight on his head, and I was indexing, and as I was going down, I was going to pull. I saw someone in the back of the Charlotte move, and I knew that if I fired and missed, I could end up hitting them.
So Mealy took cover inside a nearby store. He never did pull the trigger, and he stands by that decision.
I'm not beating myself up because I didn't shoot him, but I know that after he saw me, I think the last shot he fired was the one that he used on himself.
The gunman was dead, but not before taking 2 innocent lives with him. And as Mealy points out, taking the innocence of everyone else.
I don't ever want to have to see anyone that way ever. It bothers me, you know.
It just so happens that Nick Mealy is a former security guard at this mall of all places. He left in August for another security job. He tells us his ultimate goal is law enforcement. Back to you.
What a tough decision he had to make in a split second. Mike Benner, thank you.
Families, children run for cover during a peace rally at a park this evening. A man was streaming the Peace in the City rally live on Facebook when somebody you see here started shooting. In the past hour, we learned that shooter was then shot by a bystander who had a permit to carry a gun. Good evening to you. I'm Eric Von Anken. Glad you're with us tonight. The shooter who started all of this is at the hospital in critical condition, we're told. Titusville police say it began with a fight in the middle of the rally this evening at Isaac Campbell Park on South Street near US 1. News 6's Clay Lepard is there live covering this for us. Clay, you talked to the man who streamed this on Facebook. What did he tell you?
Eric, obviously shaken up. Plenty of people were filled inside this park for a Peace in the City rally. In fact, organizers were even giving away backpacks to children getting ready for the upcoming school year. And in an instant, it became a shootout. This is not what Dwight Harvey thought he was going to show on Facebook Live as he DJ'd this inaugural Peace in the City rally.
All these kids in the bounce house back here, and they started shooting. The bounce houses was full of kids. It was just chaos after that. Everybody was running for the exits.
A few hours later, Harvey still can't believe what happened here at Isaac Campbell Park in Titusville, watching firsthand as two people fired shots at each other in a crowd of more than 100. Titusville police say one man involved in a fistfight at this park left, only to return shortly thereafter and started firing shots. Police say the gunman was then shot by someone else who had a legally concealed weapon. That initial shooter had to be airlifted to the hospital and is fighting for his life. Officers say no one else was hurt. This Peace for the City rally was put on by family members of Tony Butler, who deputies say was murdered after his body was found inside this burned car in Mims back on July 12th.
They put it together because of that.
Peace rally, but I guess it really ain't no peace in my city.
Folks gonna come out here and shoot around kids. It's just hard for me to understand.
At this time, Titusville police is not releasing the name of the suspect who is taken to the hospital. However, they did say they do not expect any charges to be filed against that innocent bystander who fired back at the initial shooter. Eric?
Yeah, I think as Dwight said, hard to understand there. Clay Lepard live for us tonight. Thank you.
We have a team of about 12 people that provide security at New Life Church. On a normal Sunday, about half of them are armed. They are all licensed, they are trained, they are equipped, they are screened. But obviously yesterday, if we had not had an armed person on our campus, 50 to 100 people could have lost their lives yesterday.
Have you always had armed guards, or is this a recent development?
Well, always. The church is 22 years old, so not always. But in the past few years, because of the stature of the church and because of the prominence of the church, we have felt the need for that. It was in place when I became pastor 4 months ago, this policy of allowing licensed security guards on our staff. They're members of our church. These are people who tend and worship at our church. These are not mercenaries that we hire to walk around our campus and provide security. These are people who worship there, who have a sense of ownership at the church.
I want to extend my sympathy to the families of the victims and of the gunman, and I mean that very sincerely. And really, what happened yesterday were at the church, I heard shots fired, and there was chaos. There was a lot of people in the church, and the people were running away from where the shots were fired, and they were the shots were so loud I thought he was inside, and he wasn't even inside yet when I heard the rounds. And I saw him, it seemed like the hall's cleared out, and I saw him coming through the doors, and I took cover, and I waited for him to get closer, and I came out of cover and identified myself and engaged him and took him down. And that's pretty much it.
A chaotic chain of events in Tumwater.
It's like an earthquake. You just got to get up and haul ass and run.
Gunshots sent Walmart shoppers running for their lives.
People are grabbing their kids and pushing them in front of them and saying, go, go, go.
Right now, police are still on scene at that Walmart in Tumwater. A carjacker injured 2 people at separate scenes before police say a customer took out that gunman. KOMO's Patrick Quinn was on scene just moments after that shooting, and Patrick joins us now. Witnesses calling this customer a hero tonight. Patrick?
Michelle, I heard that word hero over and over again. And while there is a strong police presence right now, and really has been since about 6 o'clock this evening, it's what happened before the police showed up. The customers tell me prevented further pain and simply saved lives.
And I heard this popping noise.
Panic at Walmart on Father's Day.
And then I hear, everybody run, there's a guy shooting.
Caitlin Wallner was at checkout when she raced for the exit.
We all just dropped our stuff in the store and ran for our lives.
But police say the first gunshots were down the road near Tumwater High School, where the gunman hijacked a car, injuring a 16-year-old girl. He then went to the Walmart, where police say he fired 1 shot inside.
It's like an earthquake. You just got to get up and haul ass and run.
The gunman fired more shots in the parking lot, where Megan Chadwick huddled with her 4 kids.
And so I thought we were in the clear as soon as we got out. And then I just heard 4 gunshots in a row, the cars crashing and the carts flying at us.
The gunman tried to hijack a car. When the driver refused to give it up, the gunman shot him. That man was airlifted to Harborview.
And I didn't see any.
It was then that Brian Adams saw a Walmart customer jump into action.
He is a hero. He is a hero.
Brian says that customer pulled out his own weapon and killed the gunman.
I really think more people could easily have been shot with what this guy was doing. He was just, there were several shots.
Who is the concerned customer? We don't know right now. Megan said her husband was one of 3 she saw who's tried to stop the gunman.
He just said, take the kids, get out. He reached for his gun.
This Walmart will remain closed while police investigate the shooting. A shooting customers say could have been worse if it wasn't for the quick action of those not in uniform.
Those men stood up. They stood up. They're heroes to me.
And back here live, what's more is after that mystery customer shot and killed the gunman, witnesses say he actually then went over to the man who had been previously shot with his first aid kit and tried to save his life. That man, again, who refused to give up his car, he was flown to Harborview, and I just checked in with an hospital official. She told me that man is in critical condition tonight. We're live in Tumwater. Patrick Quinn, KOMO News.
Man who stopped a carjacking in Washington State by killing the suspect says he is still traumatized by that incident.
David George is an EMT and a pastor. He shot an armed suspect who went on a rampage at a Walmart that left 3 people hurt on Father's Day. George broke down as he described the terrifying confrontation.
When the gunman began threatening another person for the use of their car, I moved in order to have a safe shot at the gunman. He entered the vehicle, which I considered an even bigger threat, and I fired to stop the shooter. I'm a credentialed range safety officer. I train regularly to be proficient with the firearm that I carry, and I do so in a safe and a responsible manner.
George says he acted in order to protect his family and the other customers in the store. He said he and his family are praying for the other victims, and he will not face criminal charges.
In the meantime, we are getting a look at the suspect before the rampage started. Police say he drove his car into a gas station, pulled up next to another vehicle, and then got into the driver's seat of the second vehicle before being chased away. Detectives say he later used a gun that he took from his girlfriend to shoot at passing drivers.
Now to a developing story out of Spartanburg County. 2 people are in jail after deputies say one of them kicked open the doors of a church with a shotgun in hand, and the other is accused of aiding in the crime. Fox Carolina's Derek Dellinger is live tonight outside the church. And Derek, those had to be some tense moments inside of that church today.
Very tense, Jade, in fact, but it was brought to a quick end thanks to the help of the church's pastor and his grandson. Jesse Cates didn't hold back as he was taken out of the Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office this afternoon. To our cameras, he admitted to bringing a gun to the Southside Free Will Baptist Church this morning.
I wanted to see my kids.
Okay. Why did you bring a gun?
Because I went there one time and they wouldn't help.
Deputies say the case with Cates began early this morning. Pastor Henry Guyton says Cates had been a regular at the church the past few months, and this morning he showed up to the church complaining of chest pains. He was checked out, he was fine, but that wasn't the last they saw of him.
He went home, he come back with a gun.
The pastor's grandson, Henry A. Guyton, was the one with the concealed weapons permit in the church.
We noticed he pulled back up. Well, he went to the trunk of his car and pulled out a shotgun. So I grabbed my gun out of my back pocket and I took off through the back door and locked the door.
The pastor and the parishioners say they were able to get the gun away from Cates, who said he was there because he wanted to see his children. He was arrested, so was his sister. But that part of Cates' story didn't check out with deputies.
He's claiming that he came to see his kids. Well, got a new fact and a clue for you. His kids don't go there.
While authorities try to piece everything together, the sheriff says the parishioners did everything right, including Henry A. Guyton.
They locked the door, and when the guy, and they were getting, calling 911 at the time, and he didn't draw his weapon or make any moves or actions toward this gentleman until he kicked the door open and forced the issue.
I think it was going to be a hostage situation, and I believe somebody probably would have got hurt because he was very serious.
I mean, you could see it.
Yeah, you could see it in his eyes.
The pastor of the church says Cates never asked for help with his children.
If he would have told us he needed help, the church would have helped him.
And tonight the sheriff is calling the churchgoers heroes. But don't tell that to them.
I don't feel like a hero. Just felt like I done what I needed to do.
Now, the pastor of the church says they were due to have some singers, actually some children singing here at the church early this morning. Those children, by the way, apparently had no relation to Gates or his sister. But get this, the bus that was taking them actually broke down on the way to the church this morning. Jade?
Well, now, Derek, have we been able to find out anything about the suspects and their home life, maybe?
Well, according to court records, the Gates had his home foreclosed on just a few days ago. There's no word, though, on whether that could have been another possible motive for what happened this morning. Jade?
All right, Derek, thanks so much.
A doctor who was grazed by gunfire from a patient in his office at a suburban Philadelphia hospital helped stop him by apparently returning fire with his own weapon and severely injuring him. But a 53-year-old caseworker who entered the office with the patient was killed.
Without that firearm, this guy could have went out in the hallway and just walked down the offices until he ran out of ammunition. So without a doubt, I mean, I believe the doctor saved lives.
Several hours after the shooting, investigators had only limited information on what happened inside the closed office, but believe the doctor, a psychiatrist, acted in self-defense.
I know that sometimes the doctors, much to their chagrin, are facing very dangerous situations, especially in a psychiatric setting. So I can tell you that this was one of those situations where obviously the doctor, faced a situation where his life was in jeopardy.
2 guns were recovered. The motive for the shooting was unknown. The patient, identified as Richard Plotz, remains hospitalized.
He is undergoing surgery probably as we speak, and we would expect to attempt to interview him if he survives, and we don't know the full status of his medical condition, but if he survives, we would attempt to interview him.
Authorities say there are no surveillance cameras in the doctor's office or the waiting area outside. The center had no metal detectors. Bob McCall, Associated Press.
County man pleaded guilty today in connection with a shooting rampage at a Plymouth bar that left 1 man dead and another critically injured. William Alaba admits he shot the 2 men at the bar, and he was stopped only by another bar patron who pulled out his own gun and shot Alaba. Eyewitness News reporter and lead team reporter Andy Mahalchik is live outside the Luzerne County Courthouse with the latest for us. Andy.
Well, Drew, investigators say they believe Alaba would have shot more people inside that bar had it not been for that customer who pulled out his own gun and shot Alaba. William Alaba admits he opened fire at Bonnie's Food and Spirits on the night of September 9, 2012, shooting 2 customers, killing one and injuring another. Alaba was asked to leave that bar that night when customers said they saw him carrying a handgun and they got nervous. Well, Alaba, prosecutors say, got very angry. He now admits he shot 30-year-old Stephen Holloman in the head as he stood by the bar. Holloman survived. Alaba then went outside and shot and killed 39-year-old Scott Luzetsky. Alaba then, with gun in hand, walked toward 2 men who were hiding behind a car. One of the men, Mark Kaitor, a customer, pulled out his own gun and shot Alaba. Prosecutors say the bloodshed would have been much worse had Alaba not been shot.
The video footage and the evidence reveals that Mr. Alaba had turned around and was reapproaching the bar. Mr. Kiter then acted, taking him down. We believe, that it could have been much worse that night.
The families of the victims lashed out at Alaba in court, calling him a coward. Denise Johnson is Stephen Holloman's mother.
I wanted him to know exactly what he did to both our families. That's what I wanted him to know. My son is doing okay. He's a survivor, he's a fighter, and he's going to keep fighting.
Mr. Alaba, do you want to say anything at all to the families, your victims that night? Mrs. Holloman, want to say anything to her? She called you coward, that you didn't admit to it. Alaba will spend 25 to 50 years in prison. Reporting live at the Luzerne County Courthouse, Andy Mahal, Chicago Eyewitness News. Drew and Candace.
Andy, thank you.
A wild scene inside a West Philadelphia barbershop tonight ends with 1 man dead and another considered a hero. NBC 10's Randy Gyllenhaal is live at police headquarters. Randy, you spoke to people who were inside the shop when that shooting started.
Yeah, and Denise, these witnesses say this all started as an argument between a customer and one of the barbers, and they say it could have been much worse if it wasn't for another man also carrying a gun who fired back at this shooter. The West Philly barber shop was packed full of customers getting haircuts when witnesses say 1 man got angry, started a fight, and pulled a gun.
They was arguing, and they was taking it too far. And one of the barbers said, chill out.
Then suddenly bullets went flying, nearly hitting customers and staff.
I heard gunshots, so I ducked and I ran.
16-year-old Yusuf Mack hit the floor, escaping with no injuries because in what appears to be a case of very good timing, police say another man with a concealed carry permit saw what was happening and fired back, striking that shooter in the chest, killing him.
He just shot him when he was done shooting me, he ran.
That man's being credited with saving lives. Police are investigating this homicide as a case of self-defense.
Basically came to the rescue. He had a legal permit to carry.
After the shooting, the man turned himself in to police in the 16th District. Homicide detectives will determine if any charges need to be filed, but police say right now it appears he saved the lives of others, cutting a potentially deadly shooting short.
He was just a legal gun permit carrier. He responded, and I guess he saved a lot of people in there.
And you think if it wasn't for this guy that some more people could have been injured or killed?
It could have been a lot worse, correct.
Now, Philadelphia police have not released the identity of the man who was killed, only saying he was about 40 years old. Meanwhile, no other injuries inside the barbershop. Live at police headquarters, Randy Gyllenhaal, NBC 10 News.
An Uber driver with a concealed carry license shot a man who opened fire on a crowd in Logan Square. The driver was sitting in his car when he witnessed Everardo Custodio open fire Friday night at Milwaukee and Drake. He grabbed his own gun and fired 6 shots at Custodio, hitting him in the lower back and legs. No one else was hurt. The driver stayed until police arrived. He has not been charged. Meanwhile, Custodio is being held without bond on assault and unlawful use of a weapons charge.
everybody here wants facts, wants information about what's going on, and we'd love to provide more. But if you came here wanting to know the motive behind this shooting, you're going to leave here disappointed. We have certain facts that we can release to protect the integrity of the investigation. We have to release it in a timely fashion and collect the facts and make sure our information is correct before we release it. We're here assisting the Sheriff, Joe Tackett. There's multiple agencies involved: DPS, Texas Rangers, FBI, HSI, ATF, Bexar County SO, and many, many others. We are all working together to support the Sheriff in this investigation. At approximately 11:20 this morning, a suspect was seen at a Valero gas station in Sutherland Springs, Texas. He was dressed in all black. That suspect crossed the street to the church, exited his vehicle, and began firing at the church. That suspect then moved to the right side of the church and continued to fire. That suspect entered the church and continued to fire. As he exited the church, a local resident grabbed his rifle and engaged that suspect. The suspect dropped his rifle, which was a Ruger AR assault-type rifle, and fled from the church. Our local citizen pursued the suspect at that time. A short time later, as law enforcement responded, that suspect, right at the Wilson, Guadalupe County line, he ran off the roadway and crashed out and was found deceased in his vehicle. At this time, we don't know if it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound or if he was shot by our local resident who engaged him in gunfire. We know he's deceased in the vehicle. The suspect has not been completely identified.
Two people are dead after a gunman opened fire at a Fort Smith apartment complex this morning. Police say 26-year-old Zachary Arnold killed 87-year-old Luis Hicks before a neighbor shot and killed him. No one else was hurt. And new tonight, eyewitnesses to the shooting give us more details about what happened this morning at the Three Corners Apartments. 5 News reporter Billy Devane has their accounts.
Neighbors say Arnold was walking around the apartment complex trying to persuade people to go out on their balconies or go outside. Neighbors say this morning was terrifying, many of them having to take cover from the line of fire. 87-year-old Lois Hicks lived next door to Arnold. Neighbors say during the commotion, she went outside to see why Arnold was yelling.
This yelling, screaming, come out here, you guys get out here, everyone out of this building right now.
Shortly after, neighbors say Arnold followed her back into her apartment where he shot her multiple times using a semi-automatic rifle.
There were 2 older women sandwiched in between the guy that was apparently shooting. Both had come out. I guess one of them ran back in and the other one had ran back into her apartment as well, but she didn't close her door, and I guess he walked in, did what he did.
Neighbors say anyone could have been a victim to this attack as Arnold was firing rapidly into a number of apartment buildings.
A coworker of mine, she was asking him, she went outside and said, hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? And then he started shooting over at her, but she ducked, went inside her apartment. He'd seen another guy on the opposite side of us come outside, and he just started shooting over there.
After hearing the gunshots, another neighbor pulled out his hunting rifle and fired 1 shot at Arnold, killing him before anyone else was hurt.
And I'm so thankful that guy just took it upon himself to, get involved and stop this.
I mean, if he didn't do that, who knows how much worse it could have been.
We do not know why Arnold opened fire on the apartment complex, but police are hoping to find the answers to a number of unanswered questions.
That's really going to take a lot for all of us to get over. It's a shock.
In Fort Smith, covering news where you live, Billy Devane, 5 News.
All right, Bailey, thanks. Fort Smith police say their thoughts and prayers are with anyone who was affected by today's events.
Overnight, San Antonio police investigated a shooting. 2 people are dead, 2 others are in the hospital. This was outside of a home on Hazel Street over on the city's west side. Christina De Leon is working the story.
Yeah, an interesting case. Police tell us this all started with the driver hitting a parked car, and for some reason the driver got out of the car and started firing. This was just before 10 last night. Witnesses telling police the female driver of that car was heading westbound on Hazel when she hit a parked car. The owner of the vehicle, a man in his 50s, and 2 others came out to see what happened. That's when that driver got out of her vehicle and began to open fire, hitting all 3 of them, including the homeowner. Now, a neighbor came out to help after hearing the commotion and ended up shooting the driver of the car. A woman in her late 20s or early 30s. She died at the scene. Police talked to us last night about this wreck.
You know, it was a significant crash. Like I said, enough that people came to the aid and just to check on the driver's well-being.
Now, the homeowners whose car was hit died at the hospital as well. The 2 others, a teenage boy and a female in her 50s, are still at the hospital recovering, at last check in critical condition. Police are still trying to figure out what escalated that driver to open fire. And again, police say this is still an active investigation. This morning, reporting live in the newsroom, I'm Christina De Leon. Alexis, we'll send it back to you.
Christina, thank you. And
Hannah Ali didn't open her shop at the mall Tabarak International Foods right away today after yesterday's shooting of 4 people took place right in front of it. The Iraqi native says watching the violence unfold around 3 o'clock brought back horrible memories.
Yeah, it reminds me of Desert Storm War. When I was there, it was awful, and it's like the sounds of shooting, it's really making you bring things back to you, and it's so terrifying.
Police say the 16-year-old who started the shooting is in custody after he was in a fight, pulled out a gun and fired several shots. Hannah says the man seen here in the jeans, gray sweatshirt and hat was a shopper who heard the gunfire, had his own legally possessed gun and intervened, shooting the 16-year-old.
A guy was standing in the front of our store, shot him, so he fell.
Hannah says she thinks that made all the difference because she's afraid the 16-year-old might have continued shooting if the armed bystander hadn't stopped the fight.
I think that helped a lot. He's a good person, I think. I mean, I don't know what he did before, but at that moment, he's the one should be like, you know, he's a hero.
Well, developing tonight, we're learning much more about the history of a man who randomly opened fire on 2 men in Brownsburg.
let's turn now to News 8's Travis Robinson. Travis, what have you learned about that suspect's mental health?
Well, they're saying mental health is the reason behind all this. They're saying that they wouldn't go into details on his mental health, but they've got enough evidence before talking to his parents to draw these conclusions.
22-year-old Joshua Christopher Hayes randomly shot at 2 men working in Brownsburg Cemetery. Hayes chased one of them, 36-year-old Seth Robertson, to a nearby intersection. That's where Hayes killed Robertson. Hayes then chased after the second man and shot a third who was stopped at a traffic light in the process. But victim number 3 was legally armed and shot and killed Hayes.
This tragic event could have been much more disastrous. So victim 3 not only saved victim 2's life, but he saved potentially the lives of many others. Victim 3 did exactly what anybody would have wanted him to do at that scene that day.
Even one homicide is an abnormality in Brownsburg, so this received a lot of attention online. Police say misinformed rumors spread quickly on social media about a second gunman on the loose. They say there were also numerous posts jumping to conclusions about the shooting being racially motivated.
I was being provided screenshots of social media posts prior to mine even arriving on the scene, so it played a huge role. A lot of misinformation was out there.
Police met with Hayes' family to find out the real reason he started shooting.
That is part of what led us to exactly understand that there was a mental health component that was behind that we were already seeing in the investigation. However, I think the biggest thing that Mr. Hayes' family has expressed is that, they want there to be a mental health awareness component to this. They're of course devastated, but they're also devastated for the other victim.
Now, Brownsburg police say they don't have evidence to believe that victim number 3 is going to be charged for stopping Hayes, but they say that's ultimately in the hands of the Hendricks County prosecutor. I'm Travis Robinson, Wish TV, wishtv.com, and follow us on Facebook.
At about 2 o'clock this afternoon, the State Patrol was requested to respond to Superior to assist the Sheriff's Department with Nuckolls County and Superior Police Department with what they believe to be an active shooter situation at that time. When the first units got here, they found that there was one deceased victim on scene, another injured party. Ultimately, there ended up being 3 injured parties. The injured parties were transported to the Superior Hospital. One of those injured parties was determined to be the original suspect here at the Agrex elevator. He has since died at the hospital. He was identified as Max Hoskinson. Believed to be preliminary information. Preliminary information at this point is that he was a former employee here. Had been terminated, came back here a short time later, armed with a handgun. He shot 3 individuals here at the workplace, and then one of the employees here retrieved a shotgun and returned fire, which injured him and controlled the situation. There was no active threat to the community at this point. The scene was contained when the Sheriff's Office and the Police Department units got here. Our investigation will be ongoing throughout the evening here to piece together what happened.
Okay, so
South Austin neighborhood, a woman is dead, 2 men are hurt from a shooting in an alley. A witness with a concealed carry license saw a man shoot at those victims. That witness then shot at the man who opened fire. He is now in serious condition, but police did place him into custody. Finally,
I choose not to be a victim, and I just didn't want him to kill innocent people.
New for you tonight, being called a hero in plain clothes, a Decatur native stops a potential mass shooting in Texas. Good evening. This all unfolded Monday when the Decatur native confronted a gunman at the nation's largest retailer. He talked to WAND's Chris Carter about the actions he took and why he says he'd do it again. This is a WAND News exclusive.
I'm just a regular guy.
Every person has a story, even the regular guy.
My name is John Allen.
Guys like John Allen.
And I graduated from Stephen Decatur High School in 1981. I was born and raised in Decatur.
The latest chapter in the Decatur native story is one being written about around the nation.
I was pulling into the Walmart in Weslaco, Texas, and I observed a young man in his mid to late 20s carrying an AK-47.
While most would retreat from something like that and call 911, not knowing what the man's intentions were, Allen, an Army veteran, was not about to watch the story of innocent bystanders end while shopping. He jumped into action.
You know, we have open carry in Texas.
He placed his .45 automatic in his holster and made his way towards that gunman with a message for him.
You're not going to shoot anyone in this store today. I'm not going to let that happen.
Standing with a store security guard, Allen held the man at gunpoint, eventually convincing him to put down his AK-47.
He was totally surprised. Got him to put the AK-47 down. He was very upset because I had destroyed his plans.
I know you're trying to help, man. Can you please back up just a little bit more?
As police took control of the situation, Alan backed away, reflecting on what just happened.
I was a scared man trying to do the right thing to make certain that nobody got hurt.
He had no idea what was about to come.
Mercedes resident John Allen.
His actions, his story would quickly take over the internet, and despite the recognition, he doesn't consider himself a hero.
You have to put the greater good ahead of your own personal interest.
Instead, Alan believes he did what more people should do.
I choose not to be a victim, and I just didn't want him to kill innocent people.
So everyone can live to write the next chapter of their lives, and maybe even giving the regular guy a little bit more recognition.
It's time that we start protecting one another and treating each other with some love and decency and respect.
Now, the man who Alan confronted did have another gun on him. Police in Texas says that man pulled that gun on officers. Officers returned fire, killing the man. Alan has been interviewed by the Texas Rangers, and the shooting is under investigation. Live in the studio tonight, Chris Carter, WAND News.
We're going to start with a pair of violent attacks on religious gatherings over the weekend that have shaken other communities of faith across the nation. 2 people were shot and killed at a Sunday morning church service near Fort Worth, Texas, only 14 hours after an intruder stabbed 5 people at a Hanukkah celebration north of New York City.
A live stream video captured yesterday's shooting at the West Freeway Church of Christ in White Settlement, Texas. An armed parishioner quickly shot and killed the attacker. The man who responded is credited for saving many lives. Maria Villarreal is at the church about 10 miles west of Fort Worth. Maria, what do we know at this hour?
Well, you know, right now, the investigators are praising the heroic action of parishioners who helped stop this gunman. In fact, several people actually jumped up when the shots rang out, pulled out their guns to try and protect the congregation. We did speak with one woman who was sitting with her family just a few feet away from this gunman with her 7-year-old daughter. And she says almost immediately when this guy walked in, she got a bad vibe.
Well, it was like a matter of seconds.
That's how long it took to turn a peaceful Sunday service into a room filled with chaos and fear. Cameras inside this sanctuary capture the moment the gunman pulled a shotgun from his pants, shooting 2 male parishioners in the corner of the church. Some people ran to escape the danger while others hid under pews. Isabel Ariola and her family noticed the man sitting toward the back of the church.
I don't feel comfortable. I said he just, is giving me a bad vibe.
She was within feet of the gunman when he started shooting.
I tell my husband, let's go, give me my baby. And I just said, I got to get her out of here.
The gunman was killed by a parishioner who's part of a volunteer security team. Several more members drew their guns as well. There were more than 240 people inside at the time.
This team responded quickly, and within 6 seconds, the shooting was over.
Church members identified the 2 men who were killed as Richard White and Tony Wallace.
We lost 2 great men today, but it could have been a lot worse.
This has been Ariola's church for more than 15 years, and she says she has no plans to stay away.
We have to pray that we can get back. I have to, thank God that I'm alive.
The FBI is working with local and state law enforcement. Right now, they are not releasing the name of the suspect, and they are still working on the motive. But we do know that he has ties to this community and he has a criminal past. The congregation is planning to meet tonight to finish the Sunday service that was interrupted yesterday. Adriana?
Mireya, thank you. So important to be together right now.